Welcome back to Warrington Basketball. Today we've got another episode of Coach's Corner. We are joined by Northwich Jets coach Tom Shubrook, Bridgewater Jets coach Stephen Welsh, Culture Cobras coach James, and Padgate coach Jason. How are you, gents?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Josh.
Good to have you all on today. We are going to be discussing National League and your thoughts on it, really. So the pros and cons and how you think the setup is. We will start off with Mr. Steve Welsh. Fire away,
Right.
Steve.
Okay, so I think with National League, we have a lot of our kids will go and play at National League. A lot of ours tend to filter into the Cheshire Wire setup. Obviously, we've got Cheshire Wire and Cheshire Phoenix that kind of in the catchment for the ball hall. So obviously we have
St Helens, Dom would probably want to say.
Yeah, we probably
St Helens.
put St Helens as well. They're in as well. In the immediate catchment area, obviously we've got Phoenix and Cheshire Wire. Obviously, I coach at Cheshire Wire as well, so we've kind of got the natural link with the Bridgewater players. Any of them that want to kind of use National League as another platform to play, then we'll kind of push them in that direction. In terms of National League good, National League bad, there's pros and there's cons of it, really, I think. Obviously, National League's a platform to play more basketball against other people. Potentially, there could be too many kids that play National League. It's meant to be a big step up. I think, yeah, that's more or less where I am with National League. I think obviously it's got its purposes. It's another chance for kids to play basketball at another level, meet different kids, go travelling around the country and things like that. But yeah, that's my take on National League.
So what's your history in National League, Steve?
In terms of like coaching
And yeah, you started playing, coaching.
So as a player, I played at a team called Wirral Hornets from under 16s, did a couple of years at under 16s, missed a year at under 18s, then did under 18s as my last year. Only ever played at kind of development or conference level, only because there was only really, like back when I was obviously young enough to play in the junior setup at National League, there was only a handful of National League teams around. Obviously then when I got a little bit older, when I played on one of the Cheshire Jets had a second National League team, so played in that and obviously trained a little bit to make up numbers in the BBL team. And then obviously I've played the last 3 seasons with Cheshire Wire and the last 2 seasons with Cheshire Wire in their men's National League team. As a coach, been coaching National League for, it must be 8 years-ish. Obviously started with the Cheshire Jets setup. That was very, very successful. And then obviously we then split away from Cheshire Jets. So you've got Cheshire Phoenix, and then you've got Cheshire Wire, who've now got 2 National League setups. And obviously I'm now with the Cheshire Wire setup. I think the first couple of years when they split, Cheshire Wire had a very, very good set of results. And then towards the end, now recently, obviously results have started to tail down a little bit, but obviously they're in the process of rebuilding and re-strategizing, I think. Yeah, that's more or less me, I think.
Jason Royal, take us away, mate. What are your thoughts on National League?
Well, as I say, I mean, I don't really have the same background as either Steve or Tom when it comes to this type of stuff. I was very kind of indoctrinated into the coaching side of things, unwillingly, I might add at the start as well. I didn't really know whether it was something that I'd be either good at or have the time to do, but as it turned out, it's been like another sort of string to the bow, shall we say. The National League programme for me has always been a bit of a thorn in my side. Not because of any of the players or any of the coaches, simply for what it's actually become at the moment. There's a false impression that's given that to be a National League basketball player, you just have to turn up and put the kit on and do what you need to do. And then all of a sudden you're indoctrinated into this elite group of basketball players. Now, a long time ago, back in the day with, Tom, and I think was it Sankey Jets? I think they were a predominantly big National League team at the time. It was quite apparent there was a clear divide between the players. You could see it. There were chalk and cheese on the court. The way they played, the way the team watched, and the way the coaches run. And over the past sort of maybe 5 or 6 years, that's, for me, has been diluted down quite a lot. The National League programme, again, this is coming from a purely outsider's perspective. As I say, I have no experience of coaching in it or even playing in those type of leagues. But for me, the National League programme was always about an extra level of basketball, as Steve said, another opportunity to play at a better level. And when you're looking online and you're seeing the results of these two supposedly elitish teams, and one team is blowing another team out by 80 and 90 points, then there's something fundamentally wrong with that setup somewhere, and maybe it's kind of the next step onwards from what Steve was saying. The players are not necessarily, for want of a better word, good enough at that point to be thrown into a National League programme and put on that stage against a lot of other players who are incredibly more advanced on that level of basketball. Now, for me, basketball is all about keeping the kids involved. I want them to come back every single week and go, I enjoy playing. I want to come and play. I personally don't care where they play. There are some fantastic players that have jumped across several different teams over the past 8 or 9 years for me. They come from Northwich, they go to Bridgewater, they go over to St Helens, and it just changes every season. And that's what I like a lot about the ball hall setup. You never really know what you're going to face the next time round. But with the National League programme, it almost seems as if it's a money-making exercise rather than an exercise in developing basketball just on the sheer numbers that are involved. I mean, I don't know how you could deliver a coaching programme for that amount of players at that one time. All power to Steve and the guys that do it. It's just something I couldn't even envisage, basically being able to deliver that. But again, this comes from a perspective that I have never done that before. So, I'm not saying they're not doing it. I'm just saying from a coach's point of view, from me, I would find that incredibly difficult. And it's only ever going to affect the kids that play. It's never going to affect the club or the coaches. If you're not able to deliver the programme that you're saying to these kids and they're getting something worthwhile out of it, then maybe it's time to reevaluate how that structure is done.
Yeah. James McCloskey, what's your side of it? I know you've recently, is it this season you've just become a National League coach? Are you coaching the girls team?
Yeah, girls team, and I've been overseeing and just helping out with some other teams when they need a bit of help. So I'll go down and cover some extra coaching sessions if I need to help out. But the pros of National League is the level of it, the intensity of it. You get all these elite basketball players coming through the junior leagues and stuff like that, and you can see them progressing. Going to that, taking that next step is absolutely amazing for them, and it gives them that extra opportunity to show themselves and shine as a great basketball player. However, again, the con is there's a lot of National League players going into that kind of place where they've not got the skills to be there, they've not got the confidence to be there yet, and I think they need a bit more coaching before they go to that level. It is very intense, and I've seen that coaching alongside Steve under 16s. That was really intense. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed coaching at that intensity, but it is very intense. It is a lot of fitness. It's a lot of thought, and it's all up in the mind as well. So you've got to be very careful. So having a lot of young children coming into that area is quite a hard thing to do, I think, personally. But I do enjoy it. It is great fun, and I'm only learning. Like I said, I've only been doing it 6 months, and I've went a lot already. So I definitely recommend it to any coach to do a bit of National League coaching. It is amazing.
Tom Shubrook.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with Steve and Haggis on some parts of it, in terms of it's good to have a step up a level in terms of what you're doing. Where I'd probably agree with Jason is it a step up in level with some of the teams. I used to coach with Steve, so I assisted Steve a few years ago in 2013-14 when we had one of the better teams in the area, probably in the country. Slightly underachieved in the playoffs. But that team, we had 4 or 5 guys out of the ball hall maximum. Whereas at that age group now, there's 30, 40 kids out of the ball hall. Has the ball hall got that much better? I would say it's probably worse. So in terms of actual level, so you're diluting something. So for me, you're diluting the quality, so you don't need to work as hard. One of the things that Dominic at St. Helens says a lot, and Lewis has spoken about a similar thing, is a lot of the kids that you've got coming through to that level aren't able to self-motivate and compete against each other at the sort of intensity that you need to compete at to be a top level player. So they're good players. I've got loads of National League kids at my club and at the college that I work at. They're lovely kids, really good kids, really skillful, really high quality kids. But have they got the motivation or the intensity of some of the kids we've had in the past? I would say no, they don't. They've not really got the dog in them that those kids had in the past. And one of the examples I would give is Steve said he plays for the Wire D4 team, D3 team, sorry, because it got moved up in the leagues. That's a team that lost every game. Now, how many of those under-18s kids who are doing okay, they're a year young, but they're doing okay, how many of them are saying, Coach, put me in that team, I'm going to make a difference, put me in that team, put me in that team? How many are fighting for that opportunity? I don't know. I know Max plays in it. Is there any others that play in it, Steve?
Max plays, Adam Dickens.
Adam does something, yeah.
And then there was like a handful of kids that would train, but like we had one player that would train and then he kitted up for a game because he I think he got through one for the last minute or so, decided not to carry on training, and that was it for him, as you say, kind of no dog in him. But
so that's a non-competitive men's team, and instead of kids going, I'm going to get in that and dominate it, they're going, oh, I don't fancy that. Whereas if you look at someone like Cameron Hildreth, well, I think if you look at someone like Cameron Hildreth down south, he's playing for a D1 team, not a D3 team, which is glorified local league. He's playing D1 and putting up numbers and on a winning team. And he's 17 years old, the same age as these kids that we've got. Some of them at my college, some of them at Priestley. And he's got some advantages because his dad was an elite player and a really good player. And he's obviously physically a different level from a lot of the kids we've got. But he's put himself in that situation. He's playing up. How many of the kids that we've got at that age are even playing up age groups?
I think Tom's kind of right on that. You know, when I reflect back on that as well, you know, you could 3-4 years ago, you could put a group of kids against another group of kids, and you could easily pick out who were the National League program kids simply on the way they played, on exactly like Tom's just said. You know, the physicality, the way they moved the ball, the way they acted as a team. It was easy. It was absolutely easy. Now, you know, the kids that you're facing now, like Tom's just said, and Steve's rightly said as well, there's so many of them that are coming through, and they're in their ball hall teams, and you're expecting that level, and it just isn't quite there. You know, it's kind of almost like I've got the kit and I've got the bag and I've got the shoes, but I don't have the attitude to keep up with everybody else. And even though you know the National League players, you know, then you've got the same teams with the same National League players in there, and there's a huge divide between the two. And you know, rightly as Tom's just said, then it's wanting to be that next level on, not just National League. It's the next kind of thing I can go and do after a Saturday. I can go and train on a Tuesday. I can go and train on a Thursday with them, or whatever that may be. It should be something that they aspire to be better at, to get into, rather than just be part of and quite happily sail along all the way through it.
I mean, I think as well, I agree with that. However, when you're coaching like national and you see all these kids coming through, there's so many kids on the bench, and I think there's too many of them, so they don't get the opportunity to even play and have that confidence to then go to training the week after and then show what they can do, so then they get the opportunity to play the weekend after. But they don't actually have the opportunity to do that because there's so many of them sat on the bench waiting that they only get a minute on, if that. And then, you know, we all know from playing, you're not going to get hot in a minute, are you? You're only going to get, you know, a couple of shots. And
you're not going to get hot in 40 minutes, I guess.
Always get well, that's my point on it. I think there needs to be less kids going into it, and then you get those kids that are really good that then can then go and play and then give that confidence, which then gives the other kids enough time to play and then come up through that as well.
I mean, again, we're going to dial it right back here. I mean, when I was sort of 17, 18, I was in what basically would be the National League program now, playing basketball. Very, very different, incredibly different than it is now, much bigger, much better organised. And the criteria for me to actually be part of that team was immense, and it was all on me. We had to go down to Crewe every weekend, which is a chore in itself if you've ever been down to Crewe. We had to train on the Saturday. The coach would do a picking session on a Saturday afternoon. If you were, competitive enough and you caught the guy's eye, then you came back Sunday, and that was all on your own back. And that was just to be accepted into maybe training to play for the actual teams themselves. And that was periodic. That happened once every kind of month and a half. You'd go back and have to do the same thing again. You couldn't rest on your laurels. You didn't go home with your kit. If you were picked to play, you turned up and the coach gave you the kit and you gave him the kit at the end of the back. There was none of this kind of pay to play type of scenario. And it kind of echoes what James has just been saying then. These kids are travelling all over the country and it's fantastic that they do. I mean, there's nothing worse than having to play the same people week in, week out. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the individual. But for me, if I'm travelling the length and breadth of the country, I'm hoping I'm going to get some minutes out of it. And when I say minutes, I'm hoping I'm getting a good portion of those minutes out. So I'm just kind of wondering, maybe Steve can fill this one in for you. Like, what is the criteria these days to become or be accepted onto a National League team?
So I think with Cheshire Wire, they tend to have obviously trials at the beginning of the season. And
how many players do you cut from those trials, Steve?
So from like cutting, I think they more or less see it as an opportunity to create a bigger base of players. And then the idea of obviously once you've got a big base of players, then you can then obviously cherry pick and then make a top team. So like in my opinion, with the under 16s, for example, we've got this season. We had 3 teams. We had the Premier team, which I coached. We had the 16s who played in Development 1 and then 16s who played in the Development 2. The Development 2 side tended to be the first and second year 16 players that didn't make the Premier team, which was all second year 16s, and also players who didn't make the 16s Development 1. So within the under 16s, we obviously had a trial to let kids in, didn't cut anyone, but then obviously worked with those, giving them opportunity to play, and obviously then self-pick the Premier team. The kids who didn't make the Premier team would go into the 3rd team, and then the kids who didn't make the Development 1 team would also go to make that 3rd team. I think obviously from the Cheshire Wire's point of view, they're trying to get a bigger base of players and to build themselves that way, to have a bigger pool.
So what I would say in terms of base of players, I don't know if other people would agree or not, is Cheshire Wire have obviously got the ball hall, and we're a collection of clubs that are trying to create a base of players. So when you get to that 13, I know when I coached with Steve in the 2013-14 season, Wire had 8 teams, and 2 of those were mostly players playing up, so they effectively had like 6 and a bit. And all those teams were competitive nationally, at a national level. And there was kids coming over from Liverpool, kids coming over from Ellesmere, kids coming over from different areas, because it was a draw. And now Cheshire Wire have got, 11 teams?
I think they've got just under 100 kids.
So you've got 11 teams. And in 2013-14, you won 116 games and lost 28. And it's not all about winning or losing at the younger levels. But this year, you won 32 and lost 123.
Yeah.
So you've got multiple teams that haven't won a game and aren't competitive in games. I don't think that's good for kids personally. And we can say move up a level. But if you're not competitive, like there's a couple of teams in the Bolo that are full of National League players and aren't competitive in the Bolo. So how can they be ready to play National League? It's not your team. Your team had a lot of talented players, very talented players.
I think it comes down a little bit to, obviously with the National League, you get each team will get 2 training sessions. There's obviously most ball hall teams will train once a week. So obviously there's a draw to obviously being in the National League. I think with obviously results and stuff, the way the league structure is set up, obviously in the National League, obviously you've got teams that are travelling all over the place to go and play. But I think it is a problem that needs kind of addressing. I think one of the problems with the National League, they like to do things on their own type thing. I think obviously you've got history between Cheshire Wire, Cheshire Phoenix. They used to kind of poach from each other. It's kind of settled down a little bit more. It's that the trust has been broken between teams and kind of everyone stopped working together. And I think that's kind of where the Cheshire Wire thing is, where, we'll have 3 16s teams because then we know what they're all doing. And I think that's kind of one of the issues that kind of needs fixing. Obviously, this stuff that we're doing on the YouTube channel is kind of addressing it, because it just shows that obviously people want to work together. Obviously, like simple example with me, obviously I'm a freelance basketball coach. So I do a little bit of paid work for Mersey Mavericks, Cheshire Phoenix, obviously coach at Cheshire Wire, run obviously Bridgewater Jets, and I work at the ball hall as development officer. So there's 5 different people that I'm working for. But I think that's quite uncommon for someone to be working at Cheshire Phoenix and obviously coaching at Cheshire Wire. I think that's just the way it is at the minute.
I think it's.
What would your...
Go on, sorry, Josh.
Go, Tom. So you've said about the under 16, the 3 under 16 teams at Cheshire Wire. What do you think the fix would be? What would you rather see happen?
I've said to Steve this before, and it's not Steve's decision because he only coaches the Prem team. But I've got year 11s, or I had year 11s that are now out of school or for however long, who were considerably better than the kids on the 3rd team. So if they're playing ball hall and they could probably beat that team in a game, why are they in National League? Those kids should still be in ball hall playing 2 games a week. So playing their own age group and an age group up if they want to develop. I would say for us, the last 2 years we've had a year 10 kid go to Wire to become a National League player, which I always encourage. I want our best players to go to National League. Both years, that means they then end up hardly playing any games for us on a Saturday, which again, that's fine if, like Haggis says, they're actually getting minutes. So if you've built it and they're getting minutes and it's the right level for them, that's really good for them. If it's the wrong level, if they're getting physically manhandled or if they're not playing the position that I want them to play, because I'm building them for a position where they're going to be in 5-10 years, that's not good for them. So I think it's got to be done on an individual basis. But for me, the simple thing for that Wire thing is they shouldn't have had a 3rd team. And I know that sounds like unfair to these kids that are like, I'm a National League player, I really want to do that. Well, tough luck. It should be, I've got to work my arse off to get to that level. Like, I'm an old man compared to some of these guys here, like especially James. He's coming in, he's a young pup. But I remember when I was like 15, 16, my friend Dre that coaches with me at Northwich, he was playing for Manchester Giants, their academy team. They were the best team in the Northwest. And there were players he was coming from Northwich, there was players coming from Preston, there was players coming from all over, and they had 10 players on the team. And they had to be phenomenal to get on that squad. And we need to build that back again where it's prestigious to get to that level. I don't think it's prestigious if there's 30 teams coming out of 10 ball hall teams, you know what I mean?
Staying on those 3 teams, those 316 teams, how are they divided? How are they what are the divisions like for that under 16 age group at National League?
So with obviously this season with the National League, you had 16 Premier, Development 1, Development 2. I think obviously Premier is based on the north of England, so you'd be travelling to the likes of, we went to Derby, we went Newcastle, Birmingham, all like the major cities, obviously, and we had Manchester Magic, we had Trafford, and then we had Manchester Giants. So there's 3 Manchester teams, 2 Cheshire teams, and then you were kind of travelling all up and down the country. We also had Edinburgh in as well. And then in the Development 1 and the Development 2 it's northwest, so your catchment for travelling is a little bit less. Basketball England tend to, I don't know how they kind of do the leagues. Some leagues they do it, they cluster all the Manchester teams together, so you've got less travel, and then the other league would have the Liverpool ones. I think this year the Development 1 was a slightly stronger league, and the Development 2 was slightly weaker. However, you did still have a couple of weaker teams and a couple of stronger teams in each, obviously, league. You might have a couple of top-end Division 2 teams would be near the top of Division 1 as well, I think. That's kind of the structure of it.
So that third tier under-16 teams, what are their games like in terms of results? So is it still tight? Are they still being given an opportunity to develop, or is it just a blowout?
They didn't win a game this season. They were one of the teams in the club that didn't. I think, Tom, have you got any?
Their plus minus was they were minus 629, so they're outscored by 620 odd points over 13 games.
Yikes.
Now, they had some really talented players. They had a kid from our club, Zach. I think Zach's probably one of our best prospects at our club because he's really hard worker and he's relentless. He's a really good shooter, really sound kid, nice kid. And they had other good players on the team, but are some of those players better off playing with Luke's pretty good development team or with Steve's team and getting conditioning for a year and then moving up? I don't know. What do you think?
With the likes of Zach, he trained a couple of times with my Premier team just to kind of make up the numbers. I agree with you. I think he is talented and he is a prospect for the future. I think could he have been training more often with better players? Possibly. I think as I said before, it comes down to kind of culture at the minute and kind of everyone wanting to keep hold of everything that they own. Obviously, kids come into the trials with Cheshire Wire, and then I think Cheshire Wire want to kind of keep hold of those players, obviously in case they become a brilliant player, that a prospect for the future. I think that's kind
of why I got the ability to develop on multiple levels though. So have they got the actual manpower to kind of deliver an elite package to an elite prospect player, but also make sure that the kid that doesn't have it still getting a decent session out of it? Because I know some of the kids that have come from Padgate, they've gone over to play for Wire and they're really enjoying it. Fair play, they are incredibly enjoying it. But like Tom said, these kids are the ones who work their asses off. They, regardless of what I throw at them, they will always do it as hard as they possibly can. And they're coming back from the sessions that probably not you coached or somebody else is coaching, they're saying, it was good, we had to work hard. But that's okay for those guys. But the kids that are still accepted in the program because they could possibly be a better player down the line, is there still the capability for those to get a good training session and not feel like they're being left behind?
I think obviously this season it's been the worst in terms of results. I think obviously we're in the process of having coaches meetings and things to kind of reassess and obviously set things up for the new season. I think we're all in agreement at the club that we did have too many teams. And obviously this season, I think we've got each team that we're planning on entering has got obviously an assigned coach, and then we're working on getting some of the under 18s kind of assisting each of those. So then obviously giving them opportunities to obviously coach at National League, obviously in an assistant kind of form, just to help with numbers to try and improve the quality of the training session. And obviously I think training twice a week when most of the ball hall teams are training once a week, and then obviously having more space, more court space and stuff to work on different things like that. It should then transpire into a higher quality session, obviously providing that we can get more coaches to break down into smaller groups and things like that, which I think is something that we are working towards at the minute. Obviously last season was a car crash in terms of results across the board. I think obviously certain teams were semi-successful, but compared to where they have been and where they are now, it has gone kind of backwards a little bit. But we are sitting down and trying to work on how to move forward and kind of give a better opportunity for kids.
Which you can see you doing with the likes of James coming in, and obviously him being brought on as a coach as well. Which is obviously a positive thing. But yeah, obviously things with the sort of volume of teams and stuff like that. But again, if it's being addressed, I think that's a good thing. James, tell us about the women's the girls team that you're coaching. What's the idea with that?
So it was. So I came in. Mike, the head coach, just said to me, "I'm going to throw you in a bit of the deep end. I'm going to help you coach them. I'm going to teach you some of the plays that we do, and then I'm just going to kind of leave you with them," which was great. And then we played, I think, our first game last year in November, I think, when I was coaching. We won, which was a really good game. It was really close to 34-33 it ended. And it was really good to have that competitive level with the girls playing against each other. I've never seen it like that before. I've never been to a girls basketball game before, so it was really interesting to see how they played with each other. And to win their first game, the morale was absolutely amazing. Everyone was jumping with joy, and everyone got a fair game time, which was really good for the under-12s. And they all had that attitude as if, I'm here because I want to win. I don't want to lose. I don't want to be at the end of this game, and I don't want to be the one who's losing. And they all talked to each other. They all passed the ball to each other. They all listened to each other, and that was how we won the game. And it was amazing to watch that and to see that. And I thought it was an amazing thing to be part of. I missed the last couple of games with them due to work, but I think this next season I'm going to focus more on Cheshire Wire, definitely, with Steve helping me out, which is amazing, and just focus on that more than what I have done. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and it's done a lot for me. It's opened my mind up to national level. It's taught me a lot about coaching. I've learnt a lot from Steve, Mike, Lewis, and I've been stealing stuff off Jason and Tom as well when watching their games. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, good. Anything else to add, fellas?
I think you're going to get a more positive attitude coaching girls, in my experience. They tend 100%. To listen more. They tend to absorb information a lot more as well. And there tends to be a lot less ego, especially with girls teams and mixed league teams. Let's not forget there are some fantastic mixed league teams in the ball hall. And if we could bring more girls into that would be even more impressive. Maybe treat that National League program not as a route to take people out, but to actually bring people back in. Because I do agree with what Steve's saying, and Tom said the same thing as well. It's all about game time. The more they play, the better they're going to get. It's as simple as that. And the more they're put on that stage, and the more they're up against bigger and maybe faster, and maybe better players, you're going to be able to filter out those people who really, really want to push it. Who are going to go and single out the biggest guy. I've always been a big guy, and traditionally I was always put in the post. And my coach turned around to me and he said, what is the point of you week in, week out, playing the same player who's the same size as you, who's going to do the same thing? He said, if you want to be better, if you want to be something different, go and pick the smallest and the fast one and see how you get on. And I think that in the ball hall is something that we can control and we can nurture. But when they're put on that National League platform, it's kind of all or nothing. And I'm not sure whether that's the right environment, to be honest, to be learning. I think you should be at a certain stage where you feel comfortable in yourself being on that court, rather than being on that court and finding that you'd rather sit on the bench than play.
I think with obviously with Basketball England, with the National League, one of the things that I forgot to kind of mention, obviously the under-12s was a new league this season. And one of the things that they brought in as a national governing body, they decided to do passerelle. So the first 3 quarters for the under-12s, for the mixed and the girls, obviously you had to play 5 on, 5 off. So you'd play the first 5 minutes, then the game would stop, and then you'd put your second 5 on. And then I think they do that up to the 3rd quarter, and then the 4th quarter you can kind of play your stronger players. So you kind of, it's their way of guaranteeing that players aren't just sat on the bench. That's
just conditioned.
Yeah, that came into for under 12s and the under 14s development. In the 14s Premier, it was up to the coach on where they would, obviously, how they would substitute people in and that.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down with, Tom said it to me, and again, I mentioned it when I picked my Ultimate 5 team. It was a lesson I took from Tom, and it's that winning's not exactly the focus for an entire game when you're dealing with kids at this age range. It is about giving them that buffer zone almost, where they can go out and they can make mistakes, and it doesn't cause too much of an issue because you've always got a way of pulling that back. And I think from my dealings with some National League teams that play within the ball hall, and I'm just going to go with some, there's far too much focus on winning. I think I watched a game with you, Josh, months and months back now, and I watched a team that was 82 points up, full court press for 10 minutes at 82 points up, just so they could try and crack 100 on a bunch of kids. That's not right. That does nothing. That serves no purpose whatsoever. The kids get a false impression of what it takes to be a basketball player, and the kids that have just been hammered for the sake of a coach's ego don't want to come back and play no more. And for me, that's soul crushing. Seeing a kid come off the court crying because he's in an environment where he doesn't feel like he's enjoying the sport that he should be doing, there's something drastically wrong with that. So I think why some of the onus lies on the player to be better, I think a lot of the onus relies on the coaches to be better as well. It's just hard without actually kind of going into it too much in depth. It's just, I think the platform's there. I just think it really needs a bit of a readjustment to actually get the best out of it on both, really, from local league to national league. I think with a bit of adjustments and a few tweaks. And like Steve said, they are doing this. I mean, you can only find out if there's a problem when you've come across it, and the exponential growth of Wire last year was immense. I mean, I think I came down and I look at one of the open sessions and it was just rammed. And it was great. It was really, really great. There was loads of kids with all the different kits on from all the different local clubs, which was brilliant to see. But yeah, there's that, with exponential growth, you get exponential problems, and it's kind of nice to know that they're going to address it. Whether they do or not and how it works out, that's on your doorstep. That's the unfortunately, mate.
Yeah, I think it'll be obviously time will tell type thing.
Yeah.
Working with more coaches, getting more coaches involved. It obviously highlighting a problem and then how you address the problem is totally different. So time will tell.
I think it probably myself and Jason will tend to look at some of the negatives around National League. Obviously, it's no good in a year 5-6 game, the Cheshire Phoenix team doing that and smashing teams every single week. You only need to look at the league table to see that they've put them in the wrong level. And that's the thing that I was talking about really, is put kids at the right level. If we put a kid at a level where they're challenged, but they're not out of their depth, that's what we need to be aiming to do in basketball. So if you've got a kid in the ball hall that is way too good for it, move them up an age group or get them in National League, or both ideally, so that you're giving the kids the right challenge at the right time. And that's the main thing. And then the ball hall can become your freedom to fail. One of the good things that Steve taught me when I was coaching within National League a while ago is one of our players that wasn't getting a lot of minutes in games because they weren't ready for those minutes. We ended up moving him into the ball hall team as well. So he'd be training National League, and he came down and played ball hall on a Friday night. And he had very specific things of what he had to do. It's like, you need to be shooting this many shots from the outside. You need to be bringing the ball up and doing this. So it wasn't what he was comfortable with and what his natural skill set would be. And if he was playing in a ball hall team, that's not what he'd be doing, because he'd be trying to win. But that's what he needed to do to get minutes at the level he wanted to play at. And that was really successful. And by the end of the season, he was a good contributor. Similar thing to Joe Cummins. It's been mentioned on your Ultimate Teams a few times. He played up for me as a kid, and on the Friday night in the ball hall, and I'd say to him, you need to shoot this many threes. I don't care about how many you make, but this is how many you have to shoot. And on the score sheet, alongside the score, I'd do a little tally of shot a three. I didn't note down how many he made because I didn't care about that. It was, you were shooting X amount of good shots. Now, if the National League is only taking X amount of players out of ball hall, and it's a fight to get in at the older age groups, or the younger age groups is slightly different, then we can individualise their plan and help those kids get better and speak to the coaches at Ball Hall and figure out what do you need to do to play at the next level. If you're taking 30 kids out of a league, I don't think you've got the manpower to do it. Because I do look at National League when me and Steve were doing it, and we were both level 2 coaches. We had another 2 people helping us, and there was 4 of us for 13 kids. And I don't know if those numbers are holding up on it. But I think working together to give people a bit of a plan and a little bit of this is what you need to do to get better is the way to go. If you're genuine about being a league club and a league success, if it's about being a participation club, then we're going the right route and we're all good. That's what I think you need to do. And it requires, I don't know if have you tried to get either of the National League teams involved, Josh, in this channel?
I have tried, yes, I have.
But I would give an example of, not from the wire, but I emailed the person in charge of the Cheshire Phoenix a few years ago, kid that played at my college. He'd come in every morning at 7 o'clock. He'd work out with me. I emailed his coach and said, what does he have to do to get more playing time? His coach basically put a laughing emoji. So what does that say to that kid? That says, I don't give about your playing time. So like Jason says, year 5, 6 teams smashing people. I think a psychologist would say something about what that says about the coach involved. But National League can be a really positive experience, and we need to use that with them working with the Ball Hall clubs so that we're creating a cohesive pathway for all of these players so that they can improve. Because like I say, I've got 13, 14 National League players at our college, and they are lovely, lovely kids. They're outstanding kids. And if you can harness their enthusiasm and their talent and their skills, you can create something really good.
Yeah, I'd agree, to be honest. I think from my point of view, and definitely I know this from the other coaches at Padgate, if Wire were to approach us and say, look, we need you to push these individual players in these areas, don't change your training program, do what you do. But we want to see these players maybe focus a little bit harder on that. I'd be more than willing to do that. That'd be no problem at all. Because again, like Tom said, I have more negatives about the National League than I do positives. However, there are positives. That didn't exist when I was a kid in the way that it exists now. There was no place for you to go after you played local league, and there was no local league. It didn't exist. There was nothing there. It was groups of mates playing, and you were lucky. If you could, your mum and dad could get you over to Liverpool, or they could get you over to Manchester, then maybe you could do it, but you had to work your arse off to stay there and be a constant presence. Even if you weren't the top scorer, you had to be contributing every single time. And I think to help the National League program, which I think we're all in agreement is a positive thing at the end of the day, to take some of that weight off them and maybe help them, and then in turn help these kids to get better, can only be a good thing. It can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and you look at the opportunities that kids like Finn and Ellis have got. They've gone up to West Lancs and worked with them,
amazing.
And they've got chances to get full scholarships abroad and do all this sort of thing. And they wouldn't have been able to do that without National League. So I would look at the flaws, all the positives are there as well.
Yeah, they are, absolutely. It's astounding, when you look at these kids now that have gone over to America. I'd say Tom's probably got the figures closer on this, but, up to about 5 years ago, it was, there was nothing there. If you turned up and said to me, like James is going, I want to go and play in America. It's not going to happen. There is no exit route. It doesn't exist. And then all of a sudden you've got all these academies popping up, and, you've got individuals like Don pushing his program, and the results are there, they're there. If you want to work for them and you want to stand out, those opportunities are being crafted for you in the background, and I think with a couple of tweaks on that National League program, that from a local base that we can help with as well, I think we could even push that even more, really, to be honest. If you'd have told me 15 years ago that we were going to have kids from Warrington going over to America to play basketball, I'd have laughed you off the court. It was unheard of. It wasn't going to happen. And now it is. It's a real viable opportunity for these kids to go out there, have a life experience that they're not going to get over here, get an education, and play another level of basketball. how can that not be a bad thing? That's great.
I think was it Cheshire Wire a few years ago sent a few teams over to Spain, I think, and I think that was good for my brother went, and I think he enjoyed that so much, and they got that understanding of playing against a different country in the way that they play the game, because it's completely different to how we play it, and it's completely different how they coach the game over there. And I think it's amazing for kids that need to go over and play that kind of level of basketball.
I got into the Manchester League, kind of playing for Warrington Vikings at the time, like real going back now. I think I was only maybe 18 at the time, and again, very limited league potential apart from that Manchester League. And we ended up doing a basketball tour down south, and we went around all the different colleges. We didn't play the colleges, but other teams actually got involved, and we ended up playing a couple of guys from teams from America, and that was just an eye opener. You're kind of thinking, wow, this is something special, but that was driven solely by the guy who ran the club at the time. He went out there and he put the effort in, and I think that's where it comes from. And I think Steve kind of touched on it before about saying keeping everything. Keeping your fence up, keeping your best players where they are, which, I understand that. I absolutely understand that. But I think if some of that control was relinquished and pushed maybe onto the local clubs, I know from my point of view, if Steve came up to me and said, look, I want you to push this type of player, I want you to get him to shoot the ball more, I'd take that on board. I'd like to do it. It's, for me, I only get to see the kids that play in our club on a weekend and a training. I don't get to see what they're capable of on this National League program, on this National League platform, more to the point. The feedback from that back into us would be more than welcome.
Okay. I think, obviously, with the one thing that we have got with the lockdown is a lot of teams tend to have a little bit more time. Obviously, we'd be in pre-season. I think I had a memory come up on my Facebook recently about, it might have even been today, that I posted asking about tryouts. So obviously we would have been prepping for the new season. Obviously with the lockdown, we don't know when the new season is going to start. So we are in the process of planning. So what I will do, I will feed obviously this back. Obviously see if it's something that we can work together a little bit better with, give more feedback and things like that. Obviously, ultimately, we want the kids to play at the best level they can, and we want kids to have opportunities, whether that be obviously at West Lancs, whether it be Cheshire Phoenix, whether it be Cheshire Wire, or whether it be at the ball hall. I think obviously it's just finding the right level for the person where we don't get blowouts and stuff like that, because that, as we've agreed, it doesn't teach anyone anything, does it?
Well, it's something we're going to be looking towards, isn't it? So if we can get all the National League clubs sort of to put a bit of a plan together and join us at Warrington Basketball as a sort of development plan for us all to follow, then I think it will be beneficial for everyone's development in terms of players and coaches, to be fair. But gents, that is probably a good time to finish on a positive, at least. I think we've been close to an hour. Before we go, does anyone want to comment on Steve Welsh's hair?
It's a really strong look.
It's a strong look. It is. It's a very strong look.
I'm looking for separate insults. Go.
Mine is staying quite carefully underneath this hat at the moment.
What's underneath that cap, Jason?
Steve's not looking quite as fat as I thought he'd be.
Meal prepping, sorry. So
we have seen. But yeah, before Steve gets any more abuse, we'll call it a day here. Thank you all for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
No worries, welcome.
We'll speak again soon.